What's up, guys? We are here for another Masters of the Universe review, but today it's going to be something very different, definitely outside of my wheelhouse and just in pretty much every aspect. So today we're taking a look at an item from Mondo, which is the first thing I've ever bought outside of music or art, and we're taking a look at my first 6th scale figure. Now I've reviewed figures that are bigger, I've reviewed quarter scale turtles, but I've never reviewed anything that is 6th scale. That's its own thing. There's a huge collector market for 6th scale stuff. I've just never gotten into it. This, however, it kind of speaks to me a bit. So we're taking a dive into the 6th scale world with a look at Mondo's He-Man exclusive figure. So we got to talk about packaging first, and obviously it's a bit bigger than usual. So we've got this big monster here. So we've got a slipcover with some kind of cartoony style artwork for the Grayskull door, the jaw bridge. So you can see it's done up in a really nice matte finish. The artwork is just stellar in general. And then the back has got, I guess, the back of Castle Grayskull. So you've got some Grayskull bricks that wrap around the entire package. This guy is a slipcover though. So you pop it off. And then we've got just a stellar presentation all around. I didn't pay much attention to packaging on this guy, and I was pleasantly surprised. So we've got an inner case here with some gold foil artwork of He-Man. You have got the exclusive Mondo sticker here, and we'll talk about what makes this exclusive later. You've got the Motu logo down there on the bottom, and then the back has that same artwork, but it's actually, you know, the full piece done up in a full color spread. So it just looks fantastic, very nice detail, great colors, very vibrant, just all around great presentation. But it doesn't stop there. This guy is magnetically sealed, so you can pop it open from the side, and then it flips open and you have got the Grayskull insignia on the inside, if I can orient this correctly, and then you've got a bit of a bio down here, and then you've got the man himself in all his glory with all of his accessories and all the stuff that he comes with. So it's a great package. That's really what I'm trying to say here. And we've talked a lot about packaging already, more than I usually talk about, but this is definitely its own thing for sure. So let's just get right to it. Let's pull this guy out and take a look. And here he is out of the packaging, guys, our 1/6 scale He-Man figure from Mondo. And this thing has achieved something of kind of mythical status almost for a while. We have seen this particular figure and others teased and shown at conventions for literally years. It's not a joke. This guy has been shown off and on for a very, very long time. And frankly, I didn't think we were going to get him, and then the floodgates opened and we're getting him and a lot more. So I'm definitely very excited to take a look at this figure. It's obviously something that is near and dear to my heart because I do love He-Man so much. This guy is obviously its own thing. It is not really one specific He-Man. This is Mondo's He-Man. And this guy occupies kind of an interesting space as far as I can tell, because it's not a Hot Toys level of 1/6 scale figure. This guy is not that expensive comparatively, and he is more of an action figure. This definitely looks like just a large action figure. It doesn't look like a Hot Toys to me, which frankly, for my own personal interests, is not a negative in the slightest. So this is just a big He-Man figure. He happens to be kind of expensive, and he comes in a really fancy box. But I am very, very excited to take a look at this. So as usual, we're going to start with articulation and see what this big guy can do. So we're going to start at the head, of course, and this guy isn't really all that surprising when it comes down to articulation. Frankly, it's kind of what I expected for a He-Man figure, kind of going off the Motu Classics look and feel, but with a little bit extra. So if you're familiar with Motu Classics, you have an idea of what he can do, but then he's got slightly more, so more that you would expect, more that we hope Motu Classics had, frankly. So we start at the head, and the head really cannot go backwards. So we're going to start with a negative. It really cannot go up. The hair hits right away, and it's a ball peg, so it's a free moving ball in there, and you can go down, and then you can bobble side to side, and you can rotate. But you really can't go backwards. The head just pops right off, frankly. If there's one negative about the actual joint system in terms of what it can do, this is going to be my negative for this figure, is I wish he could look up. He can a little bit, and the more you rotate his head, the more you can. Frankly, you need him to get a kind of an upward look for the holding the sword aloft pose. We've got arms that go out, they rotate. bicep swivel. You've got a single rotating elbow. This joint is really tight. It's not a bad thing, but it's definitely tighter than I expected. You've got ball hinges at the wrists, which are really nice. They definitely help. They have what seem like soft ratchets in there too, which is definitely helping as well. You've got an upper diaphragm twist, side to side, back and forth a little bit, and then full rotation. You've also got a waist twist, and you have to pardon some of the noises, I'm sure. This guy is just really, really tight. Not in a negative way, it's just he's kind of squeaky. Legs go out, they kick forward, they kick backward. You can rotate in there. You've got double jointed knees, which frankly, this is the joint that I don't like based on how they look. They're kind of wonky. They are double rotating, double hinges. So you've got a hinge up here at the top and then a hinge at the bottom. So they go fully back. And then this guy can rotate in there a little bit, and then this rotates here because he doesn't have a true shin joint there. It's just the lower half of the knee. And then you've got ankles, which they go backwards, but they don't really go forwards, but they go all the way back, like unnaturally so. And then you've got a full rocker. So he's pretty well articulated. You know, he's not overly articulated. There are a few things here that definitely seem a little odd. I think he has ugly knees, and I wish his head could go further back, but the rest of the figure works pretty well for me, and frankly, so far, I've had no real issues getting him into a number of pretty good dynamic poses. Now, obviously, one of the biggest things about this figure, well, not its size, that's obviously the big thing, but the big thing for a lot of folks, and especially after I posted some pictures of this big fella on social media just as I got started messing around with him, is that he has a very interesting look about him. Frankly, this guy does not necessarily pull from any one specific He-Man. So this isn't Filmation, this isn't Mini Comics, this isn't the DC Comics, this isn't the MYP cartoon, this isn't Motu Classics. This is Mondo's own thing. Frankly, if I had to give some sort of leaning towards it, it very much looks more like 2000X MYP cartoon. It's similar. He looks a little more techno-ish with some of the metal plating on him, but frankly, you know, it's another iteration of He-Man from a different designer. And I am as much a fan of this as I probably can be for just about any new He-Man thing, although I say that having seen this thing off and on for years, so I knew what was coming for a very long time. I do think that it is a pretty interesting He-Man. It definitely has some things about it that maybe some folks might not care about, but from a general design perspective, I mean, come on, it's obviously He-Man. It's a big burly guy with very little clothing and a big iron cross in his chest. It's obviously He-Man. We'll talk about some of the finer points of this figure, though. So we, of course, have got our big guy here, and he is roughly 11.5, 12 inches tall. So, you know, a 1/6 scale foot tall style figure. We have a tremendous amount of musculature sculpted into this guy, and just about every damn thing on this figure is painted too. There is a lot of shading, there is a lot of work to bring out that musculature, to bring out the sculpt. So you can see, you know, he's got some very well shaded abs to make him look even more ripped than we already know he is. The back is really, really nicely done. You've got that harness that runs across. All of the little rivets are painted pretty nicely. It has a very leather style look to it, which I like. I really like the finishes that are given to this type of plastic to make things look like leather when they are obviously not. So that's kind of nice. I like that kind of stuff. And then we've got some nice dry brushing here on the Iron Cross on his chest. It looks worn. It looks battle hardened. It looks like it has been used. It looks like he's been in battle. We've got these kind of bracers here. You know, He-Man always has bracers of some kind. These are a little different. So they've got this big metal plate on them, which is interesting. Some golds and kind of bronzy color with some silver. My only real gripe about some of this stuff, though, is that they do rub onto some of the paint because the hands are painted. So rubbing enough against those, you will get some paint rub. And I've already got some on the right hand. I think it actually came that way out of the package. Beyond that, though, we have got this big loincloth, and what's interesting is supposedly there is a way to take this off. I have yet to really find an easy way to do it. I'm sure someone's going to find it and tell me how to do it at some point, but you can take this off, and he's got like a more traditional style loincloth and belt underneath there. So they are ready for you to be able to do that kind of stuff, which is interesting. I still haven't been able to do it in a manner that I think is safe without ruining my, let's face it, expensive toy here, so I didn't really want to do it. Even for this review, just know that it is under there, and it very much evokes a vintage figure look and feel. I, however, don't have a problem with this. This belt is a free-floating piece, so it kind of cinches everything together. So you've got the kind of faux leather loincloth here, which is just like a series of pleats basically that are overlapping, and then you've got this more techno-y style belt that sits there. And then of course you go down to the legs and you've got your furry boots, which have actual fur, and then you've got, of course, these strapped boots that are very He-Man. A lot of paint on there, a lot of kind of wash, dry brushing in there to make them look very leathery, worn, again, battle hardened, that kind of thing. So in a general sense, I really don't have any issues with how the body looks. I think it's very nicely done. It very much evokes a He-Man look and feel. You know, I mean, when you think about it, a guy that is, for one, scantily clad, that is just ripped all to hell, and then of course done up in this battle harness. It's an obvious He-Man, and of course Mondo went their own style with this particular look. And in a general sense, I like it. It's not, maybe it's not my He-Man by any means. Come on, I love the cartoon He-Man above all else. But this is still a cool looking figure, and I really can't fault them for that. I'm happy that they went down their own road to make this figure so that it's not a carbon copy of every other He-Man we've ever seen, and I think they executed it pretty well. Okay, hold up. So I did figure out actually how to do this right after I said I couldn't safely figure it out. You know, just kind of thinking about it, you realize this guy should actually pop apart right at the middle. So he's got a double ball peg for the waist twist. You can just separate the damn thing. So you can pop him apart, and there is your classic furry loincloth and the metal girdle style belt. So, you know, if you want to do something like this, you've got the option here. I will say that you might find a little bit of a gap here and there at the waistline because, of course, it is two big hunks of plastic meeting. And obviously the belt and his more, you know, loincloth style loincloth, this thing will cover that up a bit better. But if this is what you want to do, you absolutely have the option. And this certainly evokes a bit of a more traditional He-Man style. Now, excitement about those vintage undies aside, we of course have got to talk about this head sculpt, because frankly this is where a lot of folks seem to be maybe not getting it when it comes to this figure. This is what's not really doing it for them, and I can understand that. This is definitely going to be one of those your mileage may vary type of situations. You know, I say that a lot when it comes to figures because it's all very subjective. I think objectively this head sculpt is nicely done, it's painted well, and it very much fits this body. Subjectively, it's not my He-Man, but I definitely get a He-Man vibe out of it, and I'm not going to fault the designers for that. I very much think that it fits this body. I think it's painted pretty well. I think it's sculpted pretty well. I like the fact that it's a slightly stern expression. It's not just a kind of basic, he's staring off into the distance. He definitely looks like he's ready to throw down. So I'm excited about that. I think the hair is a very quintessential He-Man style of haircut, sculpted well, a lot of dry brushing in there to bring out the sculpt. So it's a pretty good head sculpt. It's not blowing me away. My only real gripe with this head, personally, is that it can't look up. But that's not a sculpt thing. Well, it is, but it's not. You know what I mean? It's more of an articulation point. But it is the sculpt that's preventing it. Otherwise, though, you know, it's kind of a good head sculpt. It's not my preferred look, but I do think it fits this particular body style, and I think it fits their look. Of course, we do have a lot of accessories to talk about here. Some things that you would expect to find in a He-Man figure, some things that you would expect to find in a larger scale premium format, expensive figure, and then some weird stuff, and then some goofy stuff, and then some nightmarish stuff. Some things that people have a very strong opinion on so far. So we'll take a look at maybe the one thing that you're curious about right off the bat if you aren't maybe too familiar with He-Man. But we have got the Burby here. So this guy is one of the more cartoony elements that they're including in the 1/6 scale line. So I believe the Skeletor is going to come with Relay, if memory serves. But this guy looks really, really good. He looks like he jumped right out of the cartoon. He does have some articulation too. We've got ball-jointed little antenna ear things here. And then the tail propeller does spin. It's kind of tight. Like, it's not really free rotating, but it does move. So you gotta hit it, it'll spin. He does come with a clear stand with a base, so you've got that. And just everything about this thing looks fantastic. I think the coloring looks good, the painting is nice, shading is really good. It very much looks cartoony. It kind of clashes against this version of He-Man, but I think it's cool that we finally got something like that. So I'm certainly not complaining at all. We do have extra hands, so we have got two different sets of hands, and Here they are, their hands. So you've got a set of gun-wielding hands, so trigger finger hands, and then you have got a set of sword-wielding hands. And these just pop right in and out. These all have the same kind of ball hinge style joint. Very easy to swap. I've had zero issues, so that's a very good thing. I was kind of worried about swapping anything on this figure. Of course I say that, and I broke this guy right in half to take his skirt off, so what do I know? We have got some weaponry to discuss, and this stuff was kind of interesting when I finally got it out of the box to see what we had. So I'm going to move this guy aside for a second, and we're going to spin He-Man around. So we do have a scabbard or a sheath on his back that you can move. This actually just pops off. It has two little clips on the back that you slide over the power harness. And if you look closely enough, you can see Battle Cat's head is at the bottom here, emblazoned in the metal. And then, of course, we can pull out our power sword here. And this, of course, is stylized, so it's not exactly Filmation or anything like that. But frankly, I really like this thing, and it's pretty tall, too. It goes up to his waist. It's pretty big. It's got a nice skull at the end of it there. A lot of paint, a lot of weathering, and it just slides right in there real easy. Like, it just fits in really snugly. So I'm very, very happy with that. Of course, we have got other quintessential He-Man accessories, weaponry. We've got a power axe here, which very much fits in the style of this sword. A lot of weathering, a lot of shading, just great sculpt work all around. Again, it's one of those things that very much fits in with this style of He-Man. You've seen this back here already, I'm sure. We've got this massive shield, and I can't really describe the weight of this thing. There is a lot of plastic here, don't get me wrong. This thing is very hefty, a lot of paint, a lot of detail. It's got a kind of faux leather strap on the back, and this guy pops out the handle, so you actually have to put that in when you take it out of the package. And all around the presentation here is just top notch. Very, very nice. And I've had this thing on the stand this guy comes with, so He-Man does come with a stand. I guess this is kind of one of those normal kind of stands for 1/6 scale figures. Again, this is my first 1/6 scale figure, so I'm not really sure. I don't know. I guess it is. I don't really think he needs it, frankly. Nothing has indicated that he's even remotely going to fall down or anything. He's been nothing but stable the entire time I have been playing with it. So it holds the shield, sort of. And then we've got a few more weapons. And these are all really interesting because they are very much vintage inspired. So these are weapons that are modeled after the stuff that you'd see like on the weapons rack. So this is our two-handed blaster rifle here. Very much mimics the vintage counterparts. A lot of sculpt work, a lot of paint, a lot of dry brushing on there. You've got another blaster pistol. This looks a little different from the weapons rack version. Slightly more updated, a little bit more detail. But again, it's very, very vintage inspired. Not necessarily as one-to-one as this guy, I don't think. Very, very close though, nonetheless. And then we've got another sword, which again, this is something you would see on the weapons rack. So a lot of detail on this. Really simplified sword. There's a lot of etching and a lot of nicks and cuts in there. So I just really like the fact that they did that kind of homage that they paid to this particular figure to show kind of where he comes from. And this figure being the exclusive version means he does come with one additional accessory, and it's not for this particular figure. So I've already mentioned Skeletor's coming multiple times now. So we have got this guy here. We've got a faceplate. So this tells us how Skeletor's heads swap out. It's just a faceplate rather than a head swap, which has his kind of Alcala head sculpt look here, which frankly, this thing is gruesome and horrifying, and I love every aspect of this. They absolutely nailed the color. Those eyes, they're not just dots of paint. Those are actual raised, sculpted, like relief pieces of plastic in there. And then this guy has a hinge, so that's pretty fantastic. So you have this ghastly skull. So I've got to deal with this guy floating around until my Skeletor gets here, but this makes the wait so much more difficult because frankly, this is just stellar. This is really awesome. There's still one other accessory here, which I mentioned there was something that's kind of nightmarish, something that is slightly freaky, slightly weird, and if you've seen anything about this figure, you know exactly what that's going to be. That's this guy right here. So we do have a vintage-inspired head sculpt for this guy, and it's weird. This is a weird one. So, you know, you can pop this guy's head right off. I told you they come off pretty easy, and you can pop this guy right on in its place. And there you go. You've got your 1/6 scale kind of vintage inspired He-Man figure. Let me get in there a little bit better. And he, frankly, it sits better on this body than I had ever expected. I really thought it was going to look tremendously goofy. It only looks goofy here. So it definitely doesn't look right by any means, but it's really funny. Frankly, I'm glad they included it. I'm just sure that this is included as some sort of a goof, as a weird thing, as a funny thing for them to include. I can't imagine they really expect anybody to display their figure like this, but you have to know that we're going to see a lot of funny photography come out of this, and frankly, I'm going to be doing just the same. So we do have a tremendous number of accessories here, and just a great deal of good stuff that Mondo threw at us, even if it is as creepy as that thing. So overall, am I happy with this purchase? Absolutely. There was very little that was going to stop me from enjoying this figure. Do I think it is perfect? I don't. Do I think it has room to improve? I absolutely do. I am very much looking forward to the next entry in this line. Skeletor has always been my preferred character when it comes to the big two. He-Man will always take a backseat to Boneface for me, but I do think that this is a pretty well executed figure. I like the body sculpt. I like the design choices that they made in some respects here. I like that harness. I like the more slightly techno-y look that they've given him. I like the fact that there is definitely some 2000X influence here, and I like the fact that they snuck in those vintage underwear underneath that new loincloth. That will definitely help some fans, I'm sure. I do think that the head sculpt isn't the greatest thing in the world. I definitely get the look. It works fine for this figure. It's not my preferred head or my preferred look that I would have gone with, but I can appreciate it for what it is. I do love the fact that this guy comes with just a tremendous amount of accessories. I love this bonus Skeletor faceplate. And frankly, the entire package is it's a nice package. Everything is presented really well, and I don't have any real technical gripes to mention with this figure, outside of the fact that he needs to be able to look up a little better, and I think his knees are ugly. Other than that, though, if you've been looking forward to a 1/6 scale He-Man, I would absolutely say to jump on this, and I am very much looking forward to Skeletor, Faker, Merman, whoever else they're going to give us. I really just want more now. So that's going to do it for this look at the Mondo 1/6 scale exclusive He-Man figure. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.